Part 1. You will hear a man who runs a volunteer agency interviewing a woman called Grace who is applying to do volunteer work. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, Grace. I'm William. Thanks for coming in for this interview. It's very important for us to meet our volunteers in person.
I understand. It's no problem at all.
OK, let's get started. What's the best phone number to contact you on?
My mobile phone's probably best. The number's 021 636 7189. But I can't always answer it during the day. I'll give you my email address as well. I check it frequently.
OK, I'll make a note that email's a good way to contact you. What's the address?
It's graceb@travel.co.nz. I chose it when I was younger, and I just haven't changed it since.
It's easy to remember. Now, do you have any particular qualifications, Grace?
I'm a housewife now, but I used to be in teaching. I trained for that and got my diploma, although I haven't done it for years. Before having children, I worked as a bank teller.
All right. I need to find out when you'll be available during the week. You said you have children. Are they at school?
Yes, both of them are. So I can't start work before 8:15 in the morning or work past 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So you'd be looking for about 4 or 5 hours a day, say 9:15 a.m. to 2 p.m? That gives you time to get to and from school to work.
That's perfect. It's important for me to be there for my children.
Of course. And are you looking to work Monday to Friday?
Yes. If it gets to be too much, I can rethink it later.
Now, Grace, you obviously have a lot of work experience, but have you done any volunteer work before?
During the Rugby World Cup, there were many visitors who didn't know their way around or what they should see and do in Auckland City. So I worked as a guide to help introduce the city to tourists. I really enjoyed it.
OK, good. Have you done anything else? Perhaps when you were at school or university? Did you do any volunteer work there?
When I was at university, the manager of a netball team asked me to be the coach, and I did that.
Great. It sounds like you like your sports.
I used to, but not so much nowadays.
OK.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
If not sports, do you have any other interests?
Oh, yes. I love to get out in my garden, and I grow most of my own vegetables. I love flowers and flower arranging. But I don't suppose there's much volunteer work associated with those kinds of things.
You'd be surprised. Any other hobbies?
Like most people, I guess, I like music. Actually, I can play the guitar, but I haven't done much for a while, so I'm a bit rusty. One day I'd like to have a go at the flute.
OK. That gives me a good idea of the type of work you might be interested in. Ideally, it'd be something that combines your experience and your hobbies. If you're interested in something outdoors, I have a position helping out on a farm. That's just for a month. It's not too physically demanding, though it does require you to be on your feet all day. And it'd be nice as long as the weather is fine, but I imagine it could be uncomfortable in the rain or the heat. In the past, we've had many positions working in community centres. They've been working with the disabled or teens. The position we have available now is with elderly men and women. They have activities like flower arranging, music lessons, sing-alongs, things like that.
Both of those sound great. I'm really open to anything.
That's nice to know. Just a couple more questions. Why do you want to do volunteer work?
Well, now that both my children are in school, I'd like to make some friends as I've got the time on my hands. Also, I like the idea of helping others.
And last question, how did you find our agency? We aren't in the phone book. Did a friend tell you about us?
No, I was on my way to school the other day and I saw your advertisement at the supermarket.
It's good to know someone sees those ads. Thank you again for coming.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a man called John Davies, who is the chairman of a photography club, giving some information to members of the club. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hi everyone, my name's John Davies. Welcome to this month's Photography Club. I'm very pleased to see a few new members in the audience, and I hope you find the club both useful and enjoyable. Now, many of you have been asking me about good photography magazines. They're all slightly different, and it really depends on what you're looking for. One of the most popular is Camera Ready. It's packed full of recommendations on where to buy the best cameras and whether the internet really has the best bargains. And it also has lots of interviews with ordinary hobby photographers like you and me. One good thing is that there's no jargon, so it's great for people who are new to photography. Outdoor Lens might suit you if you want a magazine full of inspiring and amazing images. The colour printing is extraordinarily good in this publication, though that leaves little room for handy tips about actually taking a photo. I personally buy Photographer Today. You won't find free giveaways inside or beautiful images of exotic locations, but it does help me keep abreast of movements and trends within the photography world. It includes reviews and articles about the latest equipment too, which are well worth consulting before you buy anything. Photo Now is a fairly new publication dedicated to creative photography. It's expensive, but it's packed full of recommendations on how to get the best photograph you can. For example, how to use software to create special effects, Once a year, there's going to be a competition where you can win anything from the latest equipment to a photography holiday. For those of you who are into photographing nature, then wild photos might be just the thing for you. There isn't a print version of this one. You have to download it. And it's aimed more at the professional than the beginner, so there isn't much in the way of tips, as it assumes you know all the basics. Photo Monthly is happy to accept photos from the general public for publication. This does mean, of course, that the images are not quite up to professional standard. You don't get paid any money, so if you're happy to have your work published for free, then this is the magazine for you. There's also a regular travel feature where you can find good tips about the best places to go with your camera.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Now, I promised to talk about my recent holiday with a company called Photo Safari, when I went with my wife to Kenya in East Africa. I chose this company because it has a good reputation and it offers a number of useful features for guests. Don't expect to stay in a 5-star hotel, though. The campsites we were on were good, but a little basic for some people on the tour, though there was a locker provided for all our camera gear. The company is suitable for people with any level of photographic expertise, and I learned a lot from the other guests. The only extras you need to pay for are flights, and you'll also need to organise your own transfers to the accommodation when you arrive. Otherwise, it's all-inclusive, and I have to say the catering was excellent, particularly the breakfasts. So, what did I think of the holiday? Well, everything was very well organised, and the guides were great at finding wildlife for us to photograph. Even if one morning we didn't see a lion or elephant, there was always something to snap. There were some people there who weren't into photography and were there just for a holiday, like my wife, but even they had fun and found lots to see and do. I do think, however, that more information should be given, like about what to wear. I had on a blue denim shirt one night and quickly had to change, as the colour apparently attracts certain nasty insects. And we went in May, and later found out that June to October would have been a better time for spotting wildlife. So, what advice would I give to anyone?
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2. Part 3. You will hear a tutor called Dr. Harris and a student called Lisa discussing Lisa's postgraduate research project on the role of health visitors. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Lisa. Good to see you again, especially since you've chosen to do your Masters with us.
Well, I enjoyed my first degree in nursing, and I've decided I want to become a health visitor. You know, someone who promotes health and well-being and is part of a team within a community, getting out and meeting people of all ages. So that's why I chose this research project.
Excellent. And your focus, the role of a health visitor in the community, is spot on. But at this stage, you need to keep an open mind so you can respond to initial findings once you get underway.
From what I've read, the role seems to vary quite considerably.
Yes, some health visitors tend to focus on liaising with family doctors. Others work independently with new patients. The work of health visitors in future is most likely to rely on the relationship between these roles, and I think that would be an interesting angle for you to pursue at some stage.
Yes. What I really want to look at is the programme of physical development checks, which start with babies when they're only a few days old.
Fine.
Another area which I'm thinking of investigating is the monitoring of nurseries, which is currently under review. And there's the issue of preschools and at what age they should take very young children. I thought I'd also include childminders, the individuals in their own homes who may not be qualified, but who look after young children.
That's an area I'd steer clear of, as it's very complex.
OK, will do. Anyway, I'd also like to make a short film about a few children.
A good idea. But it will depend on building up a relationship with one or two health visitors willing to introduce you to a family. An opportunity like that would allow you to look at how young children begin to form words, for example.
And peer relationships between children, as well as the ways in which they relate and play with each other, especially when they're around 2 to 3 years old. Although early use of language is my main interest.
OK, but there are other topic areas I'd like you to consider before we finalise the content and structure of your research. An equally important area is a child's home environment and the effect of a newborn baby.
Right.
You need to consider the impact of this on the parents, particularly if the family lives in poor economic circumstances. Of course, the additional expense could be a worry, especially if there are other children. Certainly, all those matters are very sensitive and not necessarily easy to detect. There's plenty of help available, but many people often feel too proud to ask for it.
This is the area where I'll need to be familiar with family law, isn't it?
Very much so. By all means, be aware of the medical conditions, and you also need to consider social factors, but you'll find that in most circumstances you will have to refer to the law to understand how far a health visitor can intervene.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, your book list. I'm glad to see worldwide healthcare policies tops your list.
Well, I wasn't sure how relevant it would be, but it's a new edition, so the information is current.
Yes, some of it may not be relevant, but it's important to keep abreast of developments in other countries which may inform our own government's legislation.
I understand. What about supporting vulnerable families? It's not as costly as some of the other books on my list.
It's an excellent buy considering the price, even though it does leave a few things out.
I've already ordered health visitors and child protection. I hope that was right.
Well, it's very expensive, but it's a sound investment and there aren't many textbooks which cover as much detail as this. It'll be a valuable reference even if the style is occasionally boring.
And what about the future of health visiting? I'm unsure how useful it'll be.
Useful in a utilitarian sense? Probably not. But it's stimulating in the way the writer considers what health visiting could be like in a perfect world. I'd suggest dipping into it to discover the improvements which could be made if money were no object.
And resources for health visitors?
Strangely enough, it's not as helpful as the title suggested. It offers a huge variety of activities and strategies which are great when working with young children, but they're presented in a rather haphazard way, and the index isn't much use either. Be very careful when using it.
OK. Thank you.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4. You will hear a student of anthropology giving a presentation on ancient symbols used in cave art. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hello everyone. My presentation today is about the cave paintings produced by prehistoric artists 30,000 years ago, and in particular the symbols that appear in or near these paintings. These symbols are found deep in caves in many countries around the world, but the ones I'm going to talk about today are mainly European. Firstly, a little about the most common symbols. The symbols that have been discovered are of different shapes and sizes. Some are easily recognizable as they're quite simple. The most basic are just a series of dots, but they may also include forms such as the triangle. However, other symbols are more complex. A case in point is the wavy line. This is sometimes used on its own, but the same wavy line is also used as part of a larger picture of a horse, so we think this is what the wavy line represents. One very important symbol is what hand symbol. This frequently appears on the walls of caves. I'll talk about it in a bit more detail. Firstly, how it was made. The paint itself was made up from a variety of things that cave artists would have had access to. They had fire, so charcoal was one ingredient. Another was the fat from the animals they would have hunted. And lastly, the saliva from their own mouths. Then there's the question of how they actually applied the runny paint onto the walls of the cave. It certainly wouldn't have been easy. They would have had to use something hollow. In fact, it's likely to have looked like a straw, like the kind we use for drinking nowadays. They'd have sucked the paint up into it, then blown it out. Researchers have recently recreated as used to make the hand symbols. The artist would have first put his hand flat against the wall, then blown the paint onto the wall, creating an outline of the hand. The researchers who've tried to recreate the process have said that not only is it a difficult technique to master, but also that a strange noise is produced. It also led them to feel lightheaded, so we can only imagine that these cave artists felt the same. I'm sure you'll agree that these symbols are really interesting, but they're also of importance. Researchers have now identified a total of 26 symbols commonly used in France and Spain. We only have this knowledge thanks to a database that's been created and which is being added to all the time. It clearly demonstrates that many symbols are often used in particular combinations, even if they're in different places. This is significant, as it looks like different tribes of cave people who lived and travelled through the area at that time would have seen these markings as well as adding to them. Although researchers don't believe that these symbols are a language as such, they are happy to call them a type of code. There is evidence to support this idea. One sequence of 5 symbols is particularly common in caves in Spain. Exactly the same sequence of 5 symbols has been found carved into a necklace made from the teeth of a red deer. So it appears that this combination of symbols may have had a special meaning. Of course, many of these explanations are theory as opposed to hard facts, which is why there is disagreement among researchers about the significance of what we are seeing, called the Great Leap Forward. The idea is that around 35,000 years ago, there was a sudden increase in creativity which led to the invention of the boat, among other things. However, not everyone agrees. In fact, many scientists believe that what has been found in Africa seems to indicate that this increase in creativity happened much earlier, around 70 to 90,000 years ago, and more gradually. One example of an artifact that is offered to support the idea is the discovery of different sorts of arrows, which would have been used for hunting. These scientists suggest that the reason more symbols haven't been found from this earlier time is because they would have been painted on things that did not survive, such as wood. In fact, we're very lucky that caves have protected these specimens as well as they have, all artists were capable of.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.